Hey everybody, welcome to day 35, part 3. I'm here with Jordan today. Lots of stuff to cover, so hopefully you got your notebooks. I want to cover first, I'm going to put a link right here to a MedCram video. Yesterday, the doctor who covers MedCram, which has, I don't know, a few million subscribers, most of them people studying for their medical boards, he went over his supplementation. So this is just yesterday he put it out. What has he been supplementing with for the past month? Who knows how long he's been doing this? What do you think he's been supplementing with, everybody? Vitamin C. And you'll notice in that video he talks about specifically IV vitamin C as opposed to supplementary vitamin C. But even the supplementary vitamin C, as we've talked about in previous episodes, has real benefit on your immune system, but it's the IV vitamin C that has been shown to be effective as an antiviral, which we won't continue to go into further. So vitamin C, what else does he supplement with? Vitamin D, and he links a couple of studies about vitamin D, and I'm just going to say right now, I'm going to put another link right here to an article that came out, I think it was on Apple News. David Green sent me the article. If you read through it, it talks a lot about what are these other things that we're not catching on to? What are the things that we don't see? Meaning we see that there's comorbidities and obesity in old people, but what else is going on? Well, you're going to see one of the things that they mentioned in the article is Hispanic and Black population. And they act like it's a mystery that we don't know why the darker the skin, you can see where I'm going with this here, hopefully, it's a mystery. The darker the skin, why are people, and they reference specifically Chicago, why is there so much more death rate with the darker skin? Well, we already speculated about vitamin D, and that seems to be the most obvious thing that's not being mentioned even in this article, and not even by the White House. Was it Fauci is the doctor? Yeah. Not even by Fauci, everybody. So all you have to do is look at the research and understand that vitamin D is in charge of about 5,000 metabolic processes, most of which is your immune system. Understand that the darker the skin, the more sunlight you need. Understand that the older you are, the more sunlight you need. Understand that the heavier you are, meaning the more obesity, the more sunlight you need because it's a fat-soluble vitamin. Recognize if you're supplementing with it. Again, are minorities supplementing with it? Again, when we're talking about who's being affected, it's not just darker skin. We also see that there's a discrepancy in the economic rate, right? So these people are also deprived of supplements, right? They're not going to spend extra money on supplementing with vitamin D3, vitamin C. This all makes sense, I hope, to everybody. There's also a discrepancy in the education of these things. Like what is vitamin D? What is it? What does it do? How do you take it? Obviously, if there's issues with your digestive system, which we've talked about, specifically bile, pancreatic enzymes, fatty liver disease, all maps onto, meaning just bad organ function in general, there would be a discrepancy in how well you can absorb and emulsify those fat-soluble vitamins. And then obviously gut permeability issues. All of these things, guys, are affecting how well your body is able to use that vitamin D. So when we think about Chicago, again, the windy city, think about the cold winters. How much sunlight are they really getting? I talked about New Orleans. It's the rainiest city in the country. So you add on the obesity, the darker skin, the lack of sunlight, the fact that people that have economic disadvantages are not going to spend their money on supplementation. Why do we keep acting like we don't know what's going on here? It's a shame. To me, this is a problem, that we keep acting like this isn't the conversation when we know for a fact that this should be the conversation. He also takes quercetin, which we talked about. There's some interesting research that he specifically talks about, but we talked about quercetin as a flavonoid and how it helps vitamin C. The half-life of vitamin C is extended, right, with most flavonoids. We'll go back to all this stuff in a second. Talks about NAC, 600 milligrams twice a day. We talked about NAC, I think, in a previous video, didn't we?
We might have. I don't remember.
It's possible we haven't, but NAC is something that is I think we have. Pretty sure we did talk about NAC. Zinc, he takes 50 milligrams. What do you think he says about zinc? He says he takes 50 milligrams, but what do you think his warning is? He says 50 milligrams is a lot. He says he's taking 50 milligrams only because of a precaution to the COVID-19, so short term. What he doesn't say are the things that we've been telling you guys. How do you increase your zinc absorption? Number one, break it into 2 different doses, morning, night. Take it on an empty stomach. These things will help maximize your zinc absorption, and then also make sure that you take copper. For every 25 milligrams of zinc, I would take at least 1 or 2 milligrams of copper with it. We'll talk about zinc and copper again in a moment. Then, guess what he talks about? And I'm gonna put another link right here where he talks specifically about what's happening in the immune system. But so here it is. But now, let me just finish my thought on what else he's doing. Sleep, everybody, sleep. Sleep, I did 2 different seminars on sleep. You're gonna be shocked at how much you recognize sleep as being the problem, meaning lack of sleep being the problem with the immune system and the body's ability to fight off viruses. If you don't believe me, listen to the doctors, listen to the research, listen to Dr. Matthew Walker, Stanford University, sleep study expert, one of the top experts in the world. You don't have to believe me, you can believe the experts. Get your 7 to 8 hours of sleep minimum every night. Doesn't matter that you're laying in bed, you got to be sleeping. And if you're not sleeping, listen to my other videos talking about sleep, insomnia, etc. I did 2 of them. Guess what else he talks about? Guess what else he talks about? Thermal therapies, the hot and the cold, the hot and the cold. We talked about that at least 5 times in our videos. These are all things that real doctors, top guys, frontline COVID-19 doctors are doing. What are you doing? What are you doing? So now I'm going to pick Jordan's brain about a few things, and he doesn't even know what I'm going to ask him about. But let me just ask you this, Jordan. What do you think of what this doctor's doing as far as vitamin C, vitamin D, quercetin, NAC, zinc, sleep, thermal therapy? Any thoughts?
It makes sense. I mean, the other thing about quercetin that we talked about was that it can also act as a zinc ionophore, so it can help zinc pass through the cell membrane.
He talks about that specifically in the video.
So we did talk about that in a previous video. So I think that quercetin is an interesting addition to.
Where can you get quercetin in food? Capers, everybody. Capers, onions. What other foods?
Capers are really high.
Capers are super high. If you like capers.
Onions, chamomile tea if you like chamomile. Green leafy vegetables are high in a lot of flavonoids, but those are like the main sources of it.
Okay, and let me pick your head real quick. Do you have anything to say about NAC? I mean, NAC has been shown in a lot of studies to do a lot of things, especially for people with certain autoimmune diseases. But anything to add about N-acetylcysteine?
With autoimmune diseases and also like mental disorders. I don't know if you've seen like depression, anxiety, trichotillomania, OCD have all shown benefit with NAC. Yeah, but NAC, I think probably the reason why he's using it is as a mucus thinning agent. They used to sell inhalers, actually I think they still do, inhalers of N-acetylcysteine because it would break up mucus in the lungs when you're sick. So that's probably why he's taking it. It's also an antioxidant. It's also good for liver health. So it's a good like general health supplement to take pretty much every day anyway.
The study that he references in the video talks specifically about it's not so much that you're less likely to get a flu or a cold, but the half-life of the amount of time and the severity of the symptoms is greatly reduced with the NAC. It's 600 milligrams twice a day for 6 months. So that's something that you might want to look into. And I know several of you have sent me NAC studies. I'm pretty sure we did cover it previously. But all those supplements you've heard us talk about and more, meaning we've covered in more detail how to maximize absorption and how to break it up, and in order for you to make sure that you're covered on all bases there in terms of what you're antagonizing and whatnot. Now, let's get into something that's pretty... Oh, last thing. Jordan talked about quercetin and how it can help usher zinc into the cells, right? Put more zinc permeability into the cells, because that's what it's all about. That's what the hydroxychloroquine does. And remember, we talked about tonic water. Let me give another stern warning here that tonic water is just like soda. It has a lot of sugar. I mentioned the other day that there are companies, at least one that I know of, that is a stevia-based tonic water, if you want to purchase that. But then we also put links to supplements from Amazon where you can get the, was it quinine? Quinine, which is Peruvian bark. So if you want to avoid the sugar, you could just take the supplement. And if you're going to do that, and if you have questions about those protocols, we can give you some links to research. But remember, the reason why the hydroxychloroquine is hydroxychloroquine, meaning it's a drug, is because they, as Jordan went into, they learned how to extend the half-life much, much longer, and so that you need also less dosage. So longer half-life, less dosage, hydroxychloroquine. Tonic water and these other supplements, the half-life is much shorter. You need higher doses in order to do the same thing as hydroxychloroquine. Fair enough? Yep. Quercetin has similar effects, so all this stuff hopefully is effective for you guys. Now, let's talk more about zinc, copper, and a couple of things that I put out in a couple of videos. So I want to put out a warning that I put out a video a few days ago talking about using in my neti pot. I have an electronic neti pot, breaking up a couple milligrams of zinc into the water and running the neti pot through my nose to get some zinc up there. And I said, I haven't heard anybody talking about this at all. So I looked into it a little bit more. Turns out that there was a zinc product on the market a few years ago, came off the market a few years ago, but it was on the market for about a decade and a half. And it was linked to loss of smell, this product, and they speculate that it was the zinc. So here's the thing about this. Let me give you a timeout and let me tell you something real quick. I'm going to put a link to a video of Chris Masterjohn talking about how and why this virus is infecting the nose and the throat, nose and throat. He references an article in Nature, which is probably the most respected journal in the world in terms of science, and two other articles basically supporting this fact that this virus is really attacking the nose and the throat, which makes sense. We talked about this being your first line of defense and how tonsils likely have a really big role to play here. I have not seen that research come out yet, but I really want to see that research. The bottom line is that we need to take care of this area. So I'm not willing to give up on thinking this way in terms of zinc and copper yet, and neither is Masterjohn. What he recommends are these lozenges, these zinc lozenges to get it into your throat. But what about the nose itself? Well, I would just simply say this. If you use a neti pot and if you put, a milligram or two of zinc, and I would also put about a 1/4 milligram of copper with it into the solution. Remember, you're wiping. As it goes in, it's coming out. As it goes in, it's coming out. So you're basically, what's coming in is coming out. You're getting trace amounts of zinc and copper into your nose, and then you're blowing your nose afterward to get it out. Now, I understand why this would cause you concern as far as, well, geez, is this going to make me lose my sense of smell? You consider over the course of the decade and a half that this product has been out, the number of cases that were reported, it seems like a lot. But remember a couple things. Number one, that people who get colds and flus, it is not uncommon that many of them get loss of smell anyway. You see it in this virus, and you can look it up yourself, that other colds and flus also cause loss of smell anyway. So think about it. Who would be using this product? It would be people who have colds and flus that would be using it. So to assign the fact that it's the product that's causing the loss of smell instead of the virus itself is a little bit convoluted thinking. But even if there is some discrepancy in the number of people who are getting loss of smell with this product, think about this. How many people are misusing the product? Meaning every time you give somebody something where they can self-administer, the process is more is better, more is better, more is better. I'm still coughing, I'm still sneezing, I must need more up my nose. And you may think, yeah, but that's only maybe 1 in 100 people. Well, when you map it over the course of 100 million people, literally, you're getting 1 million people, meaning 100 million people over the course of a decade and a half. You're getting 1 million people that are abusing the product. What percentage of those are going to have consequence? Let's say it's 1 in every 1,000. Well, that's 1,000 people, everybody. That's 1,000 people that are going to have consequence. What percentage of those would have gotten the loss of smell anyway because of the colds and the flus, which we know is common? You see what I'm saying? So my question here is there's a risk reward. There's a risk reward. The risk reward in everything. My point is that if we know, based on the Nature article and these other 2 journals are saying, yes, it really is infecting the nose and the throat. It is consequential. This is our first line of defense. And it's a good idea to get some zinc and a little bit of copper up there. My question to you is, and knowing what we know about the tonic water and quercetin, right, to be in front of this thing, if we do this for 2 months to be preventative, you leave it up to you. Is the risk reward good enough for you? Any thoughts on that in terms of your reasoning? Do you think I'm crazy?
No, I think this all makes sense. I mean, the main reason why you'd be doing this in the first place is that zinc and copper ions show antimicrobial effects inside the body and outside the body. They actually have known this for thousands of years. People in ancient India, in like the Indus River Valley, would transport water in copper vessels, and they'd realize that it wouldn't grow bacteria, it wouldn't grow the algae, it wouldn't get like slimy and gross. So yeah, I mean, this stuff isn't just new. We've known that these things have antimicrobial effects for a long time, and getting it into your nasal passages is probably a good way to kill anything bad up there.
So I said I would go back to that MedCram video, and what it's referencing is specifically your immune system. He's saying, look, this is what happens in your body. Let me make you understand that when viruses, basically any foreign pathogen that's unwelcome, this is what your body does. And he goes through a good 6 to 8 minute explanation explaining this is the reaction. Now, I said day one that everything in your body and this whole entire thing is like a race. Well, similarly, the virus, when it enters your body, is like a race, meaning it's a race between your immune system and the virus. And you'll get a clear picture of that if you listen to the explanation. But here's my point. When you go back to that article that was in Apple News, I think it was The Atlantic it was published in, they're trying to understand, well, what else is it about? Is it really just obesity? Is it really just these comorbidities? Is it really just old people? And they reference, these D-dimer proteins in the body as being predictive of how well somebody's going to do once they get into the hospital. And if you look into D-dimer and you look into how this maps onto the blood clotting of the body, you can see now that there's reports of people dying of blood clots later. So, but why do I say this? Because this D-dimer protein is part of that cytokine storm, meaning that we're already talking about sort of a red herring here, meaning that by the time you get to that cytokine storm, and then you'll kind of hear, if you read the article, how they're talking about why cytokine storm is such an issue. It's also such an issue because you really lost the window of time to be able to treat this with a lot of these things that we see now, including the hydroxychloroquine, the ivermectin, what's the other? There's a couple other ones, but you get the point. As soon as people become symptomatic, you want to treat them. Once you get into the cytokine storm, it becomes much more difficult because of that interleukin-6 that you'll read about. But you know what else they talk about in the Apple article? Are people with gut issues. People that with gut issues. Why? Because specifically they have interleukin-6 complications anyway. So my point is, guys, is go back to the point. We've got to get healthy now. We can't get this and then go, oh, I'm symptomatic. Let me stop drinking alcohol. Let me start sleeping. Let me start eating right. Let me start taking this medication. We got to recognize that the whole body is always operating, and sometimes these viruses can sit in you for a while dormant, right? While your body's trying to work on it, it's trying to work on it, it's trying to work on it. You get one night where you only sleep 3-4 nights. I promise you, again, just look at the research. That could be enough to put your body over the edge to start that cytokine storm or any of these other things that we're talking about. We've got to be on top of what we're doing all the time. Because guys, look at it like this. You ready? I'm going to give you another analogy. It's not just like going for a race. I'm going to give you another analogy. You're getting ready for war. You're getting ready for war. You're a soldier. So if you're the general of the army, you're the general of an army that's trillions and trillions of cells. If you're the general, what are you doing to prepare your army? Because all it takes is one night of bad sleep. And guess what? Game over. What are your thoughts on that? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, guys. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please shoot us a text or a comment below. If you guys need anything, please reach out. But we're going to keep putting out some content for you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. And have a great rest of the day, everybody.